The lights were blinding, the silence deafening, and 9-year-old Khalil Martin couldn't remember a single word. His small frame stood frozen on the biggest stage he'd ever seen. Thousands of eyes burned into him. The judges sat forward, waiting. The cameras zoomed closer. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Just shallow breaths and the thundering of his own heartbeat drowning out everything else. What do you do when your biggest dream becomes your worst nightmare? When the moment you prepared for becomes the moment that could break you? But this isn't a story about failure. This is about what happens when fear meets faith, when a voice goes silent and finds a reason to sing again. If you've ever been paralyzed by fear, drop a comment below. And stick with me, because what happens next will remind you why you should never give up. Khalil Martin wasn't supposed to be a star. He was just a kid from a small town in South Carolina, the kind of place where everybody knows your name and Sunday service is the highlight of the week. His family didn't have much, but they had each other, they had faith, and they had music every Sunday morning. Khalil would sit in the front pew of their little church, watching his grandmother lead the choir. Her voice carried through that sanctuary like it was touching heaven itself. And when she looked down at him with those warm, knowing eyes, she'd always say the same thing. One day, baby, you're going to sing too. That day came sooner than anyone expected. Khalil was 7 when he first stood before the congregation and sang his first solo, a gospel hymn his grandmother had taught him. The room fell silent, not the uncomfortable kind of silence, but the holy kind, the kind that happens when something sacred is unfolding. When he finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the building. His grandmother wrapped him in her arms and whispered, "You don't just sing, baby. You let heaven speak through you." From that moment, Khalil knew he had a gift, not for fame or fortune, but to share something pure and beautiful with the world, to make people feel something real. 2 years later, when his mama came running into the house waving a flyer about America's Got Talent auditions, Khalil's heart nearly jumped out of his chest. This was it. This was the stage that could change everything. His family saved every penny they could. His grandmother prayed over him every single night. And when the email came, "Congratulations, Khalil Martin, you're in," the whole neighborhood celebrated like he'd already won. But Khalil didn't know that standing on that stage would be the hardest thing he'd ever done. The weeks leading up to the audition were a blur of preparation. Khalil practiced every single day, in the shower, in the car, before bed, even in his dreams. He and his grandmother must have run through his song 100 times, perfecting every note, every breath, every emotion. She'd sit in her favorite chair, eyes closed, swaying to his voice. "That's it, baby. Don't just sing the words. Feel them, live them." When the day finally came, the whole family piled into their old sedan and made the drive to the city. Khalil pressed his face against the window, watching the buildings grow taller, the world grow bigger. His stomach churned with nervous excitement. This was really happening. But the moment they arrived at the venue, reality hit hard. Backstage was chaos. Kids with professional coaches. Performers who'd been training their whole lives. Dancers stretching. Singers warming up with scales that sounded impossibly perfect. Khalil suddenly felt very small. Very ordinary. "What if I'm not good enough?" he whispered to his grandmother. She knelt down, taking his face in her weathered hands. "Listen to me. You're not here to compete with them. You're here to share your gift. Don't sing for them. Sing for him. Sing for you. That's all that matters." He nodded, trying to swallow the lump in his throat. The wait felt endless. Every time someone came back from their audition, whether they were celebrating or crying, Khalil's anxiety grew. He could hear the roar of the crowd through the walls. Applause, laughter, sometimes silence. And then, the moment he'd been waiting for and dreading in equal measure. "Khalil Martin, you're up next." Have you ever felt like you were about to face something so big it might break you? Let me know in the comments, because you're not alone. A crew member guided him through the maze of backstage corridors. His grandmother squeezed his hand one last time before heading to her seat in the audience. "I'll be right there in the front row, baby. You'll see me." He walked toward the stage entrance, each step heavier than the last. Behind the curtain, he could hear the host announcing his name to the audience. His heart hammered against his ribs. The curtain began to rise. Darkness gave way to light, and Khalil's world stopped. The lights hit him like a physical force, hot, white, blinding. For a split second, he couldn't see anything. Then his eyes adjusted, and he saw everything. Rows and rows of people, thousands of faces, all looking at him. The judges sitting at their massive table, leaning forward with interest. Cameras on huge mechanical arms swooping closer. A sea of smartphones raised and recording. Everything he'd practiced, every word, every note, every breath vanished. His lips began to tremble. His eyes went wide. His hands, hanging at his sides, started to shake. He opened his mouth, but his throat had closed up completely. Not a sound, not even a whisper. The audience waited, shuffling, the quiet murmur of confusion rippling through the theater. The judges exchanged glances. One tilted her head with concern. Another leaned back, arms crossed, waiting to see what would happen next. Inside Khalil's mind, panic screamed, "This is it. You're failing. Everyone's watching you fail. All those people back home watching on TV. Your family, your friends, everyone." Time slowed to a crawl. Seconds stretched into what felt like hours. Every eye in that massive theater was on him, waiting, wondering, some probably pitying. In the front row, his grandmother clutched her prayer shawl tighter. Her eyes were closed, her lips moving in silent prayer. She'd waited her whole life to see this moment, and it was falling apart. The whispers grew louder. "Is he okay? What's happening? Maybe he's too young." One of the judges leaned toward her microphone, her face sympathetic. She was about to say something, maybe to comfort him, maybe to end his misery. "Right now, pause and imagine you're Khalil. Your dream is slipping away. What would you do? Drop your answer below, and keep watching, because what happens next is pure magic." Then, cutting through the noise, soft but unmistakable, a voice. "You can do it, baby." Khalil's eyes darted to the source. There she was, front row, center, his grandmother, tears streaming down her face, clutching that prayer shawl, smiling at him with so much love it hurt. Their eyes locked. In that moment, everything else faded. The crowd disappeared. The judges, the cameras, the pressure, all of it melted away. All he could see was her. All he could hear was her voice, the same voice that had sung over him his entire life. He remembered Sunday mornings in that little church, her hand on his shoulder, her words, "You don't just sing, baby. You let heaven speak through you." Something shifted inside him. His breathing steadied. His hands stopped shaking. He closed his eyes, not to hide from the crowd, but to find the music inside himself, to remember why he was really here. Not for fame, not to prove anything, but to share the gift he'd been given. He opened his mouth again, and this time, sound. The first note wavered, uncertain, fragile, but it was there. The second line came stronger, his voice finding its footing. By the third line, something magical happened. The fear that had gripped him began to crack, and underneath it, his true voice emerged. Pure, soulful, filled with emotion that you can't teach or fake. The audience gasped. Bodies that had been tense with secondhand anxiety suddenly relaxed, leaning forward with wonder. The judge's eyebrows shot up. One sat back in her chair, hand over her heart. Another's mouth hung open slightly, completely transfixed. Khalil's grandmother was on her feet now, tears flowing freely, nodding along to every word, mouthing the lyrics she'd helped him learn. And Khalil? He wasn't performing anymore. He was releasing. Every ounce of fear, every moment of doubt, every beautiful thing he'd ever felt, it all poured out through his voice. By the time he reached the chorus, he wasn't that scared little boy anymore. He was soaring. Khalil held the final note, pouring everything he had left into it. His whole body vibrated with the power of it. And when he finally let it fade, when the last echo dissolved into silence, he opened his eyes. For one breathless moment, nothing. Then explosion. The entire audience erupted. Every single person was on their feet. The applause was deafening, thunderous, wave after wave of it crashing over him. People were cheering, crying, clapping so hard their hands had to hurt. The judges stood too. All of them. The first judge grabbed her microphone, wiping tears from her eyes. "That," she said, her voice shaking with emotion, "was the bravest performance of the season. Maybe ever. Do you know what you just did?" The second judge shook his head in disbelief. "You turned fear into something beautiful. You let us watch you find your courage in real time. That's not just talent, that's heart." The third judge simply said, "We just witnessed something special, something real. Thank you for not giving up on yourself." Khalil stood there, tears streaming down his face, completely overwhelmed. He looked out into the audience, finding his grandmother. She had her arms raised, praise dancing right there in the front row, pure joy radiating from her. When they finally released him from the stage, he ran, not to the cameras, not to the other contestants waiting backstage, but straight to her. She caught him in her arms, and they held each other, both crying, both laughing, both grateful. "I almost stopped," Khalil whispered. "I almost gave up." "But you didn't," she said, holding his face. "You found your voice when it mattered most. I'm so proud of you, baby." Backstage, other contestants hugged him. Crew members wiped their eyes. Everyone had felt it, that raw, honest, transformative moment when one scared little boy decided to be brave anyway. What happened next went far beyond that theater. The video of Khalil's performance went viral. Millions of people around the world watched him freeze, watched him break, watched him rise. Comments poured in from every corner of the globe. "I cried watching this. If he can face his fear, so can I. I've been too scared to chase my dream. Not anymore." That grandmother's voice saved him and reminded me how powerful encouragement can be. Khalil's story became more than just a talent show audition. It became a reminder of something we all need to hear. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's singing anyway. In interviews after that night, Khalil always said the same thing. "I learned that fear is normal. But if you have a gift, something you're meant to share with the world, you can't let fear keep it silent, even if your voice shakes, even if you're scared. Sing anyway." His grandmother's faith was vindicated. Her prayers, her encouragement, her voice calling out in that critical moment. It all mattered. Sometimes that's all it takes. One person who believes in you when you can't believe in yourself. The ripple effect of that single performance continues. Teachers show it to students facing tests. Parents show it to kids afraid of their first day of school. Coaches show it to athletes before big games. Because Khalil's story isn't really about singing. It's about being human, about facing the things that terrify us and doing them anyway. Today, Khalil is still that kid from South Carolina, still humble, still kind, still singing. But now he carries a message bigger than any note he could ever hit. Your voice matters. Your courage matters. And the world needs what you have to offer, even if you have to shake while you're offering it. Khalil's story reminds us that our greatest moments often come right after our scariest ones. That breakthrough lives on the other side of fear. That grace meets us in our trembling. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And subscribe to Earthly Tales for more stories that remind us what we're capable of when we refuse to let fear have the final word. Because sometimes all it takes is one voice saying, "You can do it," and the courage to believe them. So let me ask you, what's your stage? What fear is keeping your voice silent? Maybe it's not a literal stage. Maybe it's a conversation you need to have, a dream you need to chase, a truth you need to speak. Whatever it is, Khalil's story is proof that you can do it. Tell me your story in the comments. I read every single one. Let's build a community of people who choose courage over comfort. Here at Earthly Tales, we share stories that matter, stories that inspire, stories that change us. Because the world needs more reminders that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because next week, we have another story that will absolutely blow your mind. Until then, remember, be brave, be bold, be you. Your voice matters. Don't let fear steal it.